And I'm back, and I took a good long break, and I'm ready to start with Chapter 4 of this article on creation.com titled Atheism, Chapter 4 being titled Atheism and Ethics/Morality. It opens up with a video debate between an atheist, thank you for naming him, and the author of this article. The debate here is linked as being titled Morality, Natural or Supernatural. And you're welcome to follow the link in the description to the article, go to Chapter 4 and see this video for yourself. Given the nature of this video that I'm making, I'm not following links. I'm simply using what the article itself has to give me, so there you go. Skipping that, technically, ethics refers to what should be, and morals to what is, or prescription and description. Completely fucking wrong. By this description here, this technical defining, morality is what happens. Therefore, rape is moral. Therefore, childhood slavery, moral. Beating children, moral. Killing people you just plain don't like is moral. Because, hey, morality, morals is what is. It's description. You see why this is wrong yet? No, ethics and morals are not prescription and description. They are two different terms used to refer to two different things that are closely related but not necessarily the same. Given that, again, the only thing I have to work with is this article, this description is so incoherent and useless that I can't tell you what the difference of ethics and morals is. But hey, description, morals is what is, great. Then slavery is okay, rape, etc. Atheists differ on the issue of ethics and morality. Some claim that there are absolutes and some do not. Correct. Depending on what is meant by absolute, how absolute we take the word, some people will have a disagreement. The thing is, if you define absolute a certain way, you might get people agreeing with you, and if you define absolute another way, then some of that group might also agree with that definition, or they might disagree with it. What matters here is the word absolute, which is so vague and unclear as to be almost useless in this conversation. So yes, atheists do differ on the issue of ethics and morality. You know who else differs on the issue of ethics and morality? Everyone. Theists disagree on ethics and morality universally. All people do. Although some people come to certain conclusions, but let's take Christianity alone. There's over 33,000 different denominations, distinct denominations measured currently, the last time I checked. 33,000 different kinds of Christianity alone, each of which disagrees on the issues of theology, ethics, morality, everything. It's hilarious and completely expected that this article doesn't make any mention of theists themselves in this conversation. But then again, if he were to include them, it would kind of invalidate the whole point he's making in this fucking piece of shit article. So, no surprise there. As to the question of whether atheists can make absolute moral statements, this is tantamount to the first-year theology student who, when asked, "Do you believe in infant baptism?" responded, "Sure I do, I've seen it done." No, that's answering a question after making a bad inference on the question, most likely for comic effect. As to the question of whether atheists can make absolute moral statements, "Sure, I've seen it done." Oh, but you don't believe in it. Okay, in that sense, I guess, you're a douchebag, Mariano, the author of this article. Yes, atheists can make any statements about anything at all. The question is, are the statements viable? Right back at you, douchebag. Christians most certainly do make any statements about anything at all. It's kind of their shtick, to borrow a word there. It's what they do. It's what this article has been doing the whole time I've been reading it so far. It does nothing but make statements about anything with no authority, and just says, that's it. The question is, are the statements viable? And we have seen, I hope I have shown, they are not. Atheists make epistemic statements about morality, but do not provide an ontological premise for ethics, except the ones who do. And you'll see, well, just remember that one. Atheists don't provide ontological premises for ethics. Well, yeah, they kind of just do that. They kind of spend a lot of time thinking about it, because we're not religious. We don't say, God said so, and leave it at that. We try to find reasons for what we think, what we say. That is to say, they can muse, I guess it's the non-fun-having kind of musing here, upon issues of morality, and come to any conclusion that they please. See above, referring to 33,000 distinct brands of Christianity alone, not to mention the other religions of the world, that come to any conclusion that they fucking well please, don't they? However, these turn out to be arbitrary personal preferences, again, see above, that are expressed as dogmatic assertions. Really, tell me which atheists are making dogmatic assertions about epistemic statements about morality. Just name one, and I'll show you an idiot. But that's all religious people do. They dogmatically assert, God said what's moral, that's it. They don't have any ontological premise for this claim. They just say it's true, and they come to arbitrary personal preferences, most of them, because, hey, shellfish is an abomination unto God in the Bible, but I see Christians eating lobster and crab all the time. Personal preferences, you say. I agree, we just disagree on who's doing what. Some atheists do make attempts at providing an ontological basis for ethics. So, previous paragraph opens up with, do not provide an ontological premise for ethics. Next paragraph, some atheists do attempt at providing an ontological. So, we don't do it, but we do it. But we don't, but we do, but we don't. But we do, but we don't, but we do. But we don't, but we do. Congratulations for being completely incoherent again, Mariano, the author of this article. These range quite widely from considering the behavior of apes to game theory. The behavior of apes is, I believe, well established inside of the concept of game theory, the understanding of game theory. Behavior is covered by game theory. So, redundant or just ignorant of what game theory is to the point where you could toss it in like that? You decide. In the first case, it is, of course, being presupposed that we share a common evolutionary lineage with apes, and that their behavior tells us something about ours. No, it's not being presupposed that we share a common evolutionary lineage with apes. It is a fact, and the person who first really codified this human beings are apes kind of thinking is Carl Linnaeus, I believe, who was a Christian theologian who was trying desperately to define what an ape was so he could differentiate monkeys and chimps and gorillas, orangutans, from human beings. He desperately wanted there to be a difference, so he said, I'm going to define what an ape is, and therefore we'll be able to finally see how human beings are different. And he failed in this attempt. He failed miserably. Any description he came that applied to apes also applied to human beings as animals. So, congratulations. It's not being presupposed, and the person who first really proposed it, maybe not first proposed it, but most strongly proposed it, was a creationist like you fucking lying sack of shit, Mariano, the author of this article. Well done. Their behavior, the behavior of not only apes can inform us about our behavior. The behavior of all social species can inform us about our behavior. Prides of lions, to which we are not as directly related as other apes. And by other apes, I mean, non-human apes, not other apes like lions. Yeah, any social species, from prey animals to predators who hunt in packs to wolves to cattle, all their behaviors, the traits that we see in these animals, can inform us about our behavior to some extent. Not fully, not necessarily, but to some extent, sure. So it's not just apes. Sorry, my screen just turned off there. So, even when such observations successfully correlate their behaviors to ours, it is merely a description. Oh, how convenient. Right. Human beings and apes act in ways that are incredibly similar to the point where we have to admit that at some point we are related. But that's merely a description. How convenient. I guess you can just dismiss anything you want when you're a Christian, and you don't have to provide a justification because Jesus. Moreover, from such correlations, it is inferred that morality is part of our overall evolution. Maybe. Sure, there are some people who think that morality is entirely sensible as a concept given how evolution works. Social species make sense in terms of evolution because it does provide some survival advantage and therefore could be selected in favor of. The same goes for concepts like morality. But of course, here comes the creationist bullshit. This amounts to intuition or urges which we are free to act upon or disregard. Well, yeah, that's what it amounts to. That's the whole thing. It's just intuition or urges. As if morality is anything else? Do you really think that writing a book and saying, don't eat shellfish, is more impressive than the recognition that morality is perhaps nothing more than intuition or urges that we are free to act upon or disregard? And perhaps we're not free to disregard. This is just a bald-faced assertion that, frankly, doesn't even go anywhere much. In the second case, investigators concoct games that they claim dissect human behavior. With regard to game theory, Benjamin Weicker notes, who the fuck is Benjamin Weicker? I don't know. Why is he talking about game theory? Is he an expert in game theory? No, he's clearly not, given the quote that's coming up here. Who the fuck is he? Article doesn't say, so I don't know. By using games with fewer rules than Candyland, the Darwinian game theorists are claiming to uncover the fundamental principles governing our decision-making mechanisms. Those monsters! They're claiming to uncover the fundamental principles governing our decision-making mechanisms. How dare they? And fewer rules than Candyland. Really? How human beings behave has rules simpler than Candyland. Have you ever fucking played Candyland, douchebag? I know you believe in Candyland being a real place that you're going to go to when you die, but that doesn't mean it's a complex game, or that game theory works on games with fewer rules than Candyland. And even if it did, guess what? If you're talking about understanding a very small mechanism, like I saw recently a study where people played Monopoly. They were studying how rich people become incapable of empathy. And the way they set this up is they took the game Monopoly, and one player was decided to be the rich player. He took twice as much money, he could roll more dice, and he had like every benefit on his side, but the poor people didn't collect $200 when they passed go. They didn't have access to as many dice. The rich people got the car, and the poor people got like the boot or something, just to really stack everything perception-wise towards the rich person. And what they saw is that the rich player became a douchebag as he played. Maybe that's the rule. You just change a few things, and you find out that being rich, or the perception of being rich, leads to the perception of being superior. This isn't necessarily part of game theory, but it's certainly a way of understanding human thought. And the fewer rules in Candyland, if you can call that fewer rules in Candyland, does it matter? Does it change any fucking thing? No, it doesn't. So, after that little quote from Uncover the Fundamental Principles, we'd better take a closer look, starting with their presuppositions. ... The answer seems to be that whatever has survived must be the most fit. Well, yeah, that's kind of what evolution says in a nutshell. But most fit doesn't mean it means fit like a puzzle piece fitting into a puzzle. You know, the fit. How does that boot fit? Oh, it's super strong! Religious people seem to have this core misunderstanding of the concept of fitness. Fitness is used sometimes to refer to being healthy, doing exercise. It doesn't necessarily mean fitness, and it doesn't always mean fitness. In the case of the Nazis, which I'm sure are going to come up again in this article somewhere, survival of the fittest did not mean blue-eyed and blonde-haired and kill all the Jews. Social Darwinism is not evolution. Therefore, whatever exists must have been the result of natural selection. Yeah, you're kind of repeating yourself. If whatever has survived must be the most fit, it must therefore have been the result of natural selection. If it was the opposite case, that whatever survived was the least fit, it would not have been the result of natural selection. Some things are not the result of natural selection, like, for instance, those pigeons that have feet that are just covered in so much feathers that they can't even walk around. I forget what they're called. Bananas are not the product of natural selection. They are the product of artificial selection. Artificial. Say it with me. Artificial selection. Not random, not whatever. Not the fittest, but the one that we most wanted to grow. So whatever exists must not have been the result of natural selection. There are other cases. Fairness exists, therefore it must be the result of natural selection. QED. Fuck you. It is always convenient to have a theory that cannot possibly be proved wrong. A Christian would sure know about that, wouldn't he? Douchebag. Another supposed basis for ethics is that an action is unethical, immoral if it causes harm to others. Sure, that is a basis for ethics. I find completely good to start with, at least as a basis for ethics. If it hurts other people, it's probably not ethical. Great. Thus, it is the nature of consequence caused by the action that determines whether an action is ethical or unethical. Right. As in, if the nature causes harm to others, it would be unethical. If it helps others, it would be ethical. And to this, we can also add even more shades of gray, such as surgery. Surgery involves taking a very sharp knife, knocking someone unconscious, and cutting them open in order to fix a bigger problem inside them. You are causing them some harm, but you're ultimately doing more good than harm if the doctor isn't an alcoholic and, drunk at the operating table, which is quite rare, I hope. I please hope. You can do some harm in order to do some better good. The difference is, do the ends justify the means, and do the means necessarily mean the end will be good? Which is not always the case. For instance, to argue from that position, religion is one of the most, if not the most, harmful force in the world. As a way of saving mankind, someone could propose exterminating every religious person on the planet. That would be untenable. That would be completely unethical. It would ultimately lead to the survival of mankind, but it would lead to a society which would ultimately be far worse than the one that we have right now. So, you always have to weigh. It's always shades of gray. It's not, God said this, therefore it's good. God said that, therefore it's bad. There's more thinking involved in the atheist or, rational way of approaching morality than these douchebags are saying. The fundamental problem with this definition of ethical behavior is that an action ceases to be unethical if no adverse consequences are experienced. No, an action does not cease to be unethical if no adverse consequences are experienced. If there are no adverse consequences, it would not be unethical in that kind of situation. I can't think of an example of such a situation, but if there are no adverse consequences, I don't know how anyone with a working brain, which excludes Mariano, the author of this article, I don't know how anyone with a working brain can say that it would be unethical to take an action that has no adverse consequences at all, ever anywhere. That's just ridiculous. As such, nothing is inherently wrong, except the things that cause harm to others. Douchebag, an action is only wrong if it causes harm to another. Right. Therefore, that's what's inherently wrong, if it causes harm to another. Do you not understand words? You know, there's these things called dictionaries. You already said you knew what they were in the first chapter. You might want to look one up sometime. I mean, I know it's another book. Don't be afraid. There's also words in it. And they're better words. Consider the example of an adulterous behavior. Under the do no harm definition of ethical behavior, adultery is wrong because it harms the other party in the marriage, i.e. the faithful spouse. I like that he uses spouse here but goes to husband later because, you know, guys, they're such dicks. Oh wait, they have dicks. This harm can include mental anguish, the spread of disease to the faithful party, and the loss of affection from the adulterous party. Something that isn't stated here is that it can also include something like the betrayal of trust to the harmed party. An additional adverse consequences includes unwanted pregnancies. What? Sorry, I just noticed. An additional adverse consequence includes... Okay, my mistake. Unwanted pregnancies outside of the marriage. However, what if an adulterous act did not lead to those outcomes? E.g., a husband who has a vasectomy occasionally has sexual relations with women free from sexually transmitted diseases while on trips to foreign cities. Because if you create a hypothetical that covers all of your bases, the only ones you listed, not the other ones that you were actively ignoring, then sure, you can win easy. In such an instance, would adultery cease being unethical? Well, no, because betrayal of trust. Would the husband's behavior turn from ethically neutral, which it wasn't, to unethical? Only if he were to confess his adultery to his wife, or he was otherwise caught, thus causing her mental anguish? Well, no, I've covered this already. Allow me to rephrase to prove my point. Let's say you're a parent, and your child dies. That's tragic. What if it takes you 3 months to learn that your child is dead? Is it only a tragedy from the point where you learn that it is a tragedy? If no one else at all is affected in this hypothetical, is it any less of a tragedy if someone dies so long as no one knows about it? If a bear dies in the wood, does no one care? The other bears probably care, and it is a tragedy when a parent loses their child, whether they are aware of it or not. So betrayal of trust here completely invalidates this entire ridiculous scenario. And frankly, I don't know what else more I can add to that. Yeah, it seems that there is something else behind or beyond the consideration of causing harm. Yeah, like more consideration than this douchebag has exhibited to this point. In fact, there must be something else. Oh, well, thank you for asserting it twice. I'm sure that makes it true. Why must there be something else? Because you asserted it twice, therefore it must be true? Because it is precisely by knowing that which causes harm sorry, throat's giving up on me. I'll start over. Because it is precisely by knowing that which causes others harm that I may come to know how to push their buttons, how to manipulate them, how to take advantage of them, how to suppress them, etc. So, if you learn what causes harm to others, then you can take unethical actions, but they won't be unethical because you know what's unethical, therefore you won't be causing harm, but it says here you'll be causing harm. An incoherent point is not made coherent by the ineptitude of the author. So, you know, I may find that I can assist my survival by causing such harm to others, and so, in this view, their harm is for my benefit. Right. What was that we said about causing harm? There must be something beyond that which makes causing harm itself unethical. No, that does not follow from what you just said. In fact, what you just said was so completely stupid that there must not be, in fact, something beyond that. You just explained what would make that unethical. The harm of others, the taking advantage, the pushing people's buttons, the profiting for your own benefit at the exclusion and at the expense of others. Where in this does it say there must be something else? you're just making shit up. Unethical based on God is determined by God's communication to man of what is ethical and unethical. Right, God says so, therefore it is. What a good basis. That's not a code. That's a rule. That's a commandment. It's not a code. It's not a way of figuring out what's good or bad or trying to figure things out for yourself. It's just, he said this, therefore that. This, oh God, this sentence. This sentence coming up is just a complete brain fuck. It's just mind fuck city coming up. This is because God's ethical code to us is derived from God's very triune relational ethical nature. He just had to get triune in there to stick it to the non-Trinitarians. Triune. The Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit. Because this is creation.com and they only believe in that version of Christianity. No one else's. And if you don't, you're wrong. What the fuck does triune have to do with anything in this article so far, let alone this point that they're making or trying to make, failing to make? Triune relational and ethical nature? How the fuck is God's ethical code derived from God's nature, from his relational or ethical nature? Oh, the ethical code is from his ethical nature. Congratulations. Using words to, this is just word salad. But I need to clear my throat because this is the sentence that is just... This nature is ethical and relational as it is unified by virtue of God consisting of one in being and yet diverse as it is experienced and enjoyed amongst the three persons of the Trinity. What the fuck does any of that mean? Seriously. Incoherent sentence. Completely. What this is doing here seems to be just like Mariano, the author of this article, decided to jerk off in the middle of writing it. The fuck? Trinitarianism. Under such an ethical code, and in contrast to any godless moral code, which godless moral code have we seen so far? The whole article to this point has been pushing towards there is no godless moral code. So how are you contrasting your ethical moral code divided by God says so, therefore it is, contrast to nothing? A given action such as adultery is still wrong even in the absence of adverse consequences to another party. Really? Allow me to retort, douchebag. A friend of mine currently met a woman and they are having sex. The woman is married to another man. The man is aware of that. In fact, one weekend he showed up to spend the weekend at their house, and the husband, Al, jokingly stated something along the lines of, "Oh good, I won't have to worry about her for this weekend." Now this is a couple that loves each other. That was meant as a joke, not as, I don't want to spend any more fucking time with that bitch. It was meant as a joke and it was taken as a joke and it was fine. It's a funny joke. The boyfriend comes over, the husband leaves, the boyfriend fucks the wife, and everybody's happy, and no one is getting harmed in any way. I mean, not even the betrayal of trust that was so important and ignored in the previous example. This is literally a couple that is fine with the wife, in this case, sleeping around. I don't know if the wife is okay with the husband sleeping around. I didn't ask. It's none of my fucking business. But this came up in conversation. And tell me, what is unethical about that? Who is being harmed? What is the negative consequence of these actions? Is it just wrong because God said no? What if they decide? Who the fuck is God to step in and say, your relationship will operate purely as I say and not however you like it is, even though no one is getting harmed, but my poor little godly feelings. Fuck God, fuck this douchebag, and fuck this stupid point. Thus, under a God-authored ethical code, some actions are inherently wrong. Right, like stealing. If you're going to starve to death, fuck you, die. Sure, the Bible says you should preserve your life, but it also says you shouldn't steal and you shouldn't lust after other people's property, including their wives, because wives are property in the Bible. But, contradictions, conflicts. Preserve your life, but don't steal to save your life, meaning you're fucked either way. The religion literally gets you coming and going. You can't do anything without violating this God-authored ethical code in which some things are just plain wrong, even though not doing such a thing could also be inherently wrong according to some other arbitrary bullshit rule. Furthermore, the atheist has no basis for saying that it is wrong to harm others anyway. Why should it be wrong to harm others? This supposed basis for ethics fails at this very point. Well, thank you for wasting all my time with that other fucking bullshit you just listed. Atheist has no basis for saying that it is wrong to harm others. Right. I don't want to get punched in the face. It is therefore reasonable for me to think that punching other people in the face would lead to them not liking that action. I don't want to get punched in the face. Other people probably don't want to get punched in the face. If I go around punching other people in the face, I'm probably going to end up having no teeth by the age of 35. I have no basis for saying it's wrong not to harm others. To harm others. Actually, I think I do have a basis. In fact, I, compared to religious people, am the one with the only basis for saying it's wrong to harm others. According to Christianity, it has been right to harm others whenever the fuck you can get your way doing so. Oh, Amalekites harm the Jews? Kill the motherfuckers. Oh, atheists? Burn them at the fucking stake. Hey, those Muslims don't believe in Jesus. Kill the motherfucking lot of them. Where's the God-authored ethical code in that one? I wonder. Now, of course, because we haven't had enough quotes yet, let us consider some atheists' statement about morality. Atheist, one of them, apostrophe S, single atheist, Dan Barker, who will be keeping us company for a very good long time at this point. Co-founder of the Freedom from Religion Foundation, claims that Darwin has bequeathed what is good and refers to Jesus as a moral monster. Which, the second one is correct. The first one sounds like a sentence fragment that was quote mined to oblivion and back. Darwin has bequeathed what is good about what? There's no full quote here, so I have no context to work with. It sounds like bullshit, and no, he didn't, even if Dan Barker says so. He includes the following within his understanding of Darwinian goodness. Really, Darwinian goodness? Let's see how much of this is Darwinian goodness. I support a woman's right to choose an abortion. I think it's a good thing. I think abortion is actually a good thing for society. If I can borrow a religious word, a word that my mother-in-law uses, I think abortion is a blessing for many, many, many women. Dan Barker saying there. Yeah. Did they have abortion when Darwin was alive? And does evolution say anything at all about abortion? Anywhere. Anywhere. A single word. That is, does it even use a euphemism like termination of pregnancies or something like that? Does it, any sort of, in any sense, say abortion is a blessing and Darwinian goodness? Whatever the fuck that is supposed to be in this psychopath's reinterpretation of quote-mined bits of sentences. But of course, Mariano, the author of this article, continues his bullshit line. This appears to be in keeping with his general view on human worth, value, and dignity. A thesis that's the size of a thumb that has what? What? Would you put it in a little locket and hang it around your neck? Where the fuck did that come from? You see my point here? Quoting sentence fragments with no context gives us no understanding what is actually meant. And human worth, value, and dignity. Let me go back to one of my old jobs. When I was a security guard, I was working in a hospital, and they had an attached palliative care section for people who were long-term elderly patients. Most of them were probably going to be there until they died. And one night, I was doing the rounds, and I got called up to the third floor because a bat had flown in as they opened the patio door. It just came flying in and flew around and hid in some woman's room, and they closed the door, and they called me up to deal with it because the nurse, the male nurse, by the way, was too much of a pussy to deal with it himself, I guess. And they called me up, and I came in. I walk into this old lady's room, and I'll never forget her face, because I actually care about human worth, value, and dignity, and this woman had none of that left. She was still alive, but she was bedridden, unable to move. When I walked in, she couldn't even turn her head. She was lying like this. The door was on that wall coming in, and her bed was perpendicular like this. She just barely turned her head towards me, and her eyes were just wide and staring at me, and she was gasping for breath, just unable to do anything, and this bat was scaring the fuck out of her. She was so scared, but she couldn't even move. Where the fuck is the dignity in that? Here's my suggestion. If we gave that person an opportunity to check out, to literally have, a chance to commit suicide, or have someone help her commit suicide, she would no longer be suffering. She would no longer be bedridden. She would be able to finally make a decision for herself. She wouldn't be stuck in bed, staring at an intruder and panting, unable to get away, unable to move, barely able to breathe. Is that dignity? Is that really what you consider dignity? Forcing someone to live even in such miserable conditions? Again, atheists have more morality than Christians, and this is the kind of reason why. A fetus that's the size of a thumb, yeah, guess what? Maybe for that mother, that baby, that infant, oh wait, that teenager to be, because you have to use the scary words, maybe for that woman, maybe she got raped and she got pregnant. Maybe she already had a bunch of kids and she had a bunch of C-sections, and being pregnant again will kill her. I actually knew a woman like that. She had a lot of C-sections, and her husband was very religious, and he just wanted to make her push out babies over and over. She was pregnant, she pushed out a baby. 2 months later, she had to be pregnant again. And she told me that the next time she got pregnant, the C-section that she would have to get, because she could no longer give birth naturally, would kill her. She would die. If she got pregnant, saving her life would have required an abortion. So allow me to create another scenario. A single mother of 6. She just got knocked up by her husband, and her husband just died. She learned she got pregnant. She's a month late, maybe, on her period. She just found out she's pregnant. She got the test. She's pregnant. She has 6 kids. And same situation, being pregnant or attempting to give birth will not only kill her, but will kill the baby. Is abortion wrong in that case? It is? Okay, the baby dies anyway, and so does the mother, the single mother of 6, leaving 6 children parentless. Fuck your abortion is always wrong narrative, because fuck you. Dan Barker has also stated, there is no moral interpreter in the cosmos, nothing cares and nobody cares. And he bases his humanistic morality upon his reasoning whether it will ultimately matter what happens to us or a vegetable. ... What happens to me or a piece of broccoli? It won't. The sun is going to explode, we're all going to be gone, no one's going to care. Right. Oh, poor little Christians. You sad that the sun's gonna explode and kill all the human beings in the world and no one's gonna be left to care? Well, God is gonna care for you. Look at the little baby Christian. Oh. Are you happy now? You fucking dipshit. What the fuck does it matter? Yeah, there is no one in the universe with a magic beard that cares for everything. So the fuck what? We do. We exist. We care. We decide what morality is, ultimately, as if that example of the single mother of 6 children was not proof enough of that for you. We decide what's moral, not based on some arbitrary, someone said so once, therefore, but by analyzing the context, the circumstances, by analyzing the outcomes of certain actions, the reality of reality. That's how we come to the conclusions that we do in morality. We no longer follow slavery. Why? God said slavery is okay. Jesus said slaves obey your masters, according to Paul, I think. Why aren't you promoting slavery right now? Well, to be fair, some people are, and they're fucking disgusting pieces of shit, and I'm sure most of you watching who are religious will agree with me. Slavery is wrong. Oh, but it was right back then. When did your God ever say it wasn't anymore? He didn't. Therefore, either you're wrong, or religion is not the basis for morality. Guess which one is the correct one? It's that second one. He does not seem to consider that the fact that the concept which holds that there is no moral interpreter in the cosmos, nothing cares and nobody cares, we're all going to be gone, no one's going to care, quite logically and easily leads to inhumane immorality. Really. The Crusades, jihads, the Inquisition, the burning of witches, the promotion and encouragement and endorsement of slavery. Fuck you! Dan Barker has further stated, atheism and free thought and true humanistic morality are so much more clear, so much more useful, so much more reasonable, so, without all the negative baggage of theology and judgment and hell and the supernatural. My goodness, I used to believe in the supernatural, and now I realize that I don't have to try to prop up this phony supernatural system. In reality, it's very freeing, very relaxing. I'm not afraid of being judged and going to hell anymore. I'm responsible for my own actions. The consequences are natural, and I live with them. And it turns out that most atheists and agnostics are more accountable. They are more moral. They have more responsibility in their lives because they realize that it's what matters in this world, not an imaginary supernatural world. True humanistic morality, which is much superior to Christian morality. Right, that leads to immoral behavior. I'm responsible for my own actions. The consequences are natural and I live with them. Therefore, I can do whatever the fuck I want. Slavery, that's fine. Remind us again who endorses slavery. Remind us again who has stated as divine law that a raped virgin, a woman who is raped, must marry her rapist to punish the rapist, who now gets an eternal fuck toy that he can never divorce. I vaguely remember a story from a year or two ago, maybe more. A Muslim woman in the Middle East was raped, and she was about to be forced to marry her rapist. She committed suicide, and I don't fucking blame her. You call that moral? Driving someone to spend the rest of their life with their rapist is moral? You see these? That's why you're wrong. Dan Barker has also offered motivating factors for moral actions that are quite common within atheist thought. These are self-serving motivations whereby one should be good not for goodness' sake, but in order to benefit oneself. For example, if you wish to be a healthy person, meaning mentally healthy. If you wish to be labeled ethical by other people. If you wish to be viewed by your society as a good person. If that's something you wish. Now, if that sounded a little bit weird as I was reading it, it is quoted in a single line, no capital letters or no bracket ellipses to signify that there's a cutout part at the beginning of the sentence. It just, bam, 4 sentence fragments that are quoted in tiny little bits. Yeah, if you want to be a healthy person, mentally healthy, helping others kind of does help you. Yes, that's self-serving. If you want to be labeled ethical by other people, is it really so wrong to not want to be called unethical by other people? I mean, I'm an atheist, and I'm called unethical and immoral and evil by theists on a regular basis. I don't really like that fucking kind of thing. Imagine if I was actually unethical and immoral and evil and labeled as such by people whose opinion actually matters. I wouldn't like that at all. So yeah, it is self-serving to want to be labeled ethical. Although, to be completely fair, not many people go around saying, oh, he's ethical, she's ethical, oh, they're ethical, not ethical, ethical. It's not really something that comes up. If you wish to be viewed by your society as a good person, same point. If you really want to be viewed by your society as an evil person, well, become a Christian or a Republican or both, and you're set for life. If that's something you wish. God forbid anyone do good things because it's something they want to do. Wait, is that really self-serving? Oh wait, it's not. Well, I guess 3 out of 4 isn't too bad, especially for Christians. That's like 110% on an exam. Here's an alternative. Heaven. You Christians do good things, at least in part, if not as a whole, to get to heaven, to get an eternal reward where you will be eternally happy. Or if you actually read Revelation chapter 4, where you'll actually get to suck God's dick forever and enjoy a floor show with 4 chimeras and I think 24 elders of Israel. Not really self-serving, is it? To want an eternity of happiness, therefore you do good things to others. Here's something that may surprise you. We all, to some extent, do moral actions for self-serving reasons. Maybe not all actions are always made in self-serving ways, but it tends to be the trend, sure. Helping others can help yourself. You're still helping other people. Oh, that's wrong. You shouldn't help other people if it helps you. Okay, then the world will collapse into an uncaring, Christocentric lifestyle, such as the, well, Nazi Germany, I guess. Hey, they do, Hitler stuff all the time. I may as well join in. It's fun. Likewise, examples include the following statement by the Humanist Society of Scotland, because that matters, apparently. It's best to be honest because... ... I'm happier and feel better about it myself if I'm honest. How dare they? Emphasis added, it's best to be honest. This seems to me like a list of it's best to be honest because it's best to be honest, and people fill in the blank. It's kind of like it strikes me as that Mad Lib vibe, especially the ellipses in the middle. It's best to be honest because I'm happier and feel better about myself if I'm honest. Right. How is that bad? However, why being honest should make us happy remains a mystery. Isn't it enough that it does, though? I mean, even if you don't have any idea why being honest makes you happy, the fact that it does should kind of suffice to some extent, no? I mean, sure, some people might perform rape and that makes them happy. That's sufficient to them, but it's not sufficient to everybody. But isn't being made happier by an action kind of its own reward? Why does this matter? Oh, it remains a mystery. The implication, of course, being, why atheists seek happiness is unknown. They don't have God. They're miserable people. Fuck you. Simple as that. Reginald Finley, a.k.a. the Infidel Guy, and Matthew Davis, no idea who that is, or the Infidel Guy either, put forth the following reason for moral behavior. If one does horrible things to people, that person will eventually have horrible things happen to him. This is hip, my name is Earl, watered down karma. Is it really? Does that make it wrong? I don't know what the fuck my name is Earl is. I know what karma is. I know it's not really watered down because that's basically what karma is. But yeah, guess what? If you go around murdering people, you're eventually going to get put in jail. And if you're in the south of the United States and have a mental illness and are black, you're probably going to get killed for it. Social commentary there for the win. Yeah, that's kind of the truth. It's not just watered down karma from hip. It's hip. That is hip. The fuck. It's not just hip. My name is Earl, watered down karma. It's kind of an accurate reflection of reality. But is obviously pseudo-morality based on self-preservation, perhaps aptly Darwinian. No, it's not pseudo-morality, and it is based on self-preservation, to some extent. It's actually morality. based on self-preservation, and perhaps aptly Darwinian. Yeah. Why is that bad? Douchebag. With regards to Dan Barker, let us lastly note that he also argues that rape is not absolutely immoral. Really? Does he argue that rape is not immoral? Let's see in the next quotes. His reasoning involves a hypothetical scenario in which malevolent aliens from outer space attack Earth. He and other atheists have made some very troubling statements about rape. Further examples? That's right. His reasoning involves a hypothetical scenario that we're not telling you exactly what the phrasing was or what it is because you might agree with it and we don't want that. Hey, if malevolent aliens ever invade Earth and attack, and the only way to kill them is to rape them, yeah, rape would then become moral if you're looking at the preservation of your species against a murderous group of thugs. That's a hell of a hypothetical, but yeah, in that extremely weird context, rape would be moral. It would practically be required if you're fighting back. He and other atheists have made some very troubling statements about rape. Further examples include Sam Harris. If I could wave a magic wand and get rid of either rape or religion, Harris explains, I would not hesitate to get rid of religion. Right. Because between the two, religion is worse than rape. That's not just me saying so. Religion is okay with rape. You just have to look inside the Bible where it says, go and kill those motherfuckers, kill the men, kill the children, kill the women, but if you find virgin girls, keep them. You can fuck them all you want when you get back home. Codified rape inside a religion. Get rid of religion, you get rid of a lot of the taboos regarding sex that would encourage people to see sex as more of a natural thing and not so much if it's a taboo. It would prevent people from having this idea that, oh, I have to save myself from marriage for Jesus. Why? The fuck does Jesus have to do with any of it? Is he gonna knock your boyfriend out of the way when you get married and stick his dick in your vagina and then your boyfriend gets a go? Get rid of religion and you get rid of that stupid justification. If you get rid of religion, the greater harm in this world than mere rape, which is universally reviled, but religion, which is worse, but people still like it somehow, get rid of religion and you get rid of some of the rape. So it's a win-win if you get rid of religion over rape if you have the ability to do both. So yeah, not only do I agree with Harris here, I think leaving this quote in makes Mariano, the author of this article, look like even more of a dumbass than the other failed quotes. He also believes that rape is not only perfectly natural, contrary to contemporary morality. No, the fact that rape is natural doesn't make it moral, so it's not contrary to any fucking thing, you fucking douchebag, but that rape played a beneficial role in our evolution. And perhaps it did. It certainly benefited the people whose offspring we are descended from because rape happened in the past. It didn't benefit the people who didn't rape. That's not to say that we should therefore rape as much as we want because genetics, it did play a beneficial role in our evolution. The genes survived. The ones that didn't died off. Therefore it is beneficial in evolution. It's not beneficial in terms of society. And this article, this quote from Dawkins goes, there are many things about us for which we are naturally selected, which we repudiate in moral terms. So again, the quoted section contradicts the point that's being made by the dumb fuck who wrote this. We repudiate rape in moral terms, even though it is natural. For instance, there's nothing more natural than rape. Human beings rape, chimpanzees rape, orangutans rape, so do dolphins. Rape clearly is a part of an evolutionary strategy to get your genes into the next generation if you're a male. Right. You can't move from that Darwinian fact about us to defend rape as a good practice. I mean, no one would be tempted to do that. Except, apparently, the dumbass who wrote this article. We have transcended that part of our evolutionary history in repudiating it. So, Dawkins isn't saying that it's beneficial, that it's good, that it's natural. He's saying it does happen, it is natural, and it was beneficial in evolution, but we don't like it. It is not considered moral, even though it is a thing that happens, and happened. Richard Dawkins was asked about rape during an interview. Justin Brierley, if we had evolved into a society where rape was considered fine, would that mean that rape is fine? Richard Dawkins, I don't want to answer that question. It's enough for me to say that we live in a society where it's not considered fine. We live in a society where selfishness, where failure to pay your debts, failure to reciprocate favors is regarded as scandalous. That is the society in which we live. I'm very glad that's a value judgment. I'm very glad that I live in such a society. A little box on the side here has a picture of Dawkins like this, probably from when he was thinking about something. Atheists such as Richard Dawkins have trouble finding logical reasons to denounce rape as unacceptable behavior. No, he's refusing to answer a bullshit question asked by what I assume to be a bullshit interviewer. Justin Brierley again. When you make a value judgment, don't you immediately step yourself outside of this evolutionary process and say that the reason this is good is that it's good? And you don't have to any way to stand on that statement. I phrase that as a question, but it's actually asserted. It's an accusation that is being made here. Richard Dawkins answers the accusation, however, the unwarranted accusation. My value judgment itself could come from my evolutionary past. It could. So what? Justin Brierley again. So therefore it's just as random in a sense as any product of evolution. Richard Dawkins, you could say that. It doesn't in any case. Nothing about it makes it more probable that there's anything supernatural. Point Dawkins. Ultimately, Justin Brierley again, your belief that rape is wrong is as arbitrary as the fact that we've evolved 5 fingers rather than 6. Richard Dawkins answered, you could say that, yeah. And you could say that, and Justin Brierley did say that, but he's a fucking dumbass. So, what's the point again? Professor of the Philosophy of Science Michael Ruse, he's back, makes similar statements. Morality is a biological adaptation, no less than our hands and feet and teeth. Morality is just an aid to survival and reproduction. Apparently, having feet and hands was not predetermined. They actually understand something. Oh, but wait, nor that we have 5 fingers rather than 6, nor that rape is immoral versus it being moral. So close. So close. Furthermore, 2 evolutionists wrote a book claiming that rape was a device for men to perpetuate their genes. Dawkins just stated that in the quote that you didn't understand. Mariano, the author of this article, you dumb shit. The way the quotes in this section are set up is say something, quote someone else to build on that thing, to make it scarier, and then quote the same guy saying something else that makes it even scarier. Yeah, it is a device for males to perpetuate their genes, as Dawkins stated himself previously. That doesn't make it right. And the quote here is to the article on creation.com, but the whole link is one of the authors tied himself in knots trying to explain why rape was still wrong under his own philosophy. I bet you that the author did no such thing. Quote mining, whatever, just complete bullshit here. The fact that rape is a device for males to perpetuate their genes that was used in evolutionary terms does not mean rape is wrong because I don't understand, it's a hard question. The answer is actually listed by Dawkins above, and yet they're still struggling to understand it, even though they quote Dawkins and other people over and over again. I guess they're just not smart enough to understand that the things that they're quoting that has all those words in it it means stuff, and if you're smart enough, you can understand what the words mean, and then get understanding of that meaning. Richard Dawkins urges us to rebel against Darwinism with his regards to morality. Darwinism has nothing to do with morality, so it's impossible for Dawkins to ever do any such thing. Based upon his personal and societal preferences, or based upon, Darwinism not being a moral concept. It is amoral, not immoral, but amoral. It has nothing to do with morality. Morality can be derived from evolution. Yes, that does not mean evolution is therefore the ruler of morality. His premise for prescribing rebellion is that nature is not cruel, only pitilessly indifferent. This is one of the hardest lessons for humans to learn. We cannot admit that things might be neither good nor evil, neither cruel nor kind, but simply callous, indifferent to all suffering, lacking all purpose. Christians have a huge problem with this. If something bad happens, God's punishing you. If something good happens, God's rewarding you. If something good happens to an atheist, he's testing our faith. If something bad happens to a Christian, I must have displeased him somehow. Agenticity, I think, is the word that Michael Shermer used to describe this kind of thing. Human beings in general have to believe that there is some agent pulling the strings behind everything. It's hard for these people to understand that no, there is no guy pulling the strings. Stuff happens, sure. That doesn't make it mean something. For instance, what does it mean that my eraser bounced twice when it hit the desk? It's neither good nor evil, neither cruel nor kind, but simply callous, indifferent to all suffering, and lacking all purpose. It bounced because that's what matter does, not because there was a greater meaning behind it. Overall, the atheist really does not have much of a basis for moral decisions, other than the atheist's own preferences, which is a basis for moral decisions, which should go against the Darwinist conception of nature because it is morally better to do so. Right. I'll be generous. Ignore the bullshit phrasing of this, the sheer, arrogant, superiority complex biased bullshit behind this. I'll grant you this point entirely. Christianity has no basis for morality, so fuck you. There we go. 4.1, Atheism and the Problem of Evil. I love this section. The problem of evil is a huge problem for religious people. It has been for the many, many, many centuries, if not millennia, that it has been presented. And there has never been a good answer to it. So let's see if this article, written by a guy who has heretofore shown himself to be a fucking moron, can answer this age-old question. He can't. The first problem of evil, as far as theist debates are concerned, is the fact that atheists define evil based on personal preferences. No, they don't. They don't define evil based on personal preferences. They kind of do that whole if it causes harm ethical thing that we saw earlier to define evil. Nothing to do with personal preferences, although to some extent people can consider one thing evil, like the boyfriend and the married woman who are fine with it. Well, some people can think that that's still evil, but none of their fucking business, and I don't see how that's relevant to this particular position. This means that they cannot logically formulate an argument for the problem of evil without first providing an absolute definition of evil. Wrong. We can borrow the Christian definition of evil and therefore formulate the argument, which is precisely what has been done and what you consistently fail to answer, you disingenuous piece of shit. Some make appeals to the fact that evil, let us refer to it in the form of suffering, is a tangible physical sensation. Really. That is evil. I want to kill babies. That's not evil. It's not a physical sensation. This is tangible. Therefore, this is evil. I know I'm exaggerating. It does mention form of suffering, but Come on, this is a horrible definition by anyone's metric, including, I am sure, this dumb fuck's, but hey, he's not about to start being honest now. Yes, yet this amounts to a bioorganism's subjective interpretation of sensory input, and yes, those are the words that he uses. So if you didn't believe me when I said he wasn't about to start being honest, there's your proof. 2 pop culture musical groups had something to say in this area. Yes, our go-to sources for the problem of evil are Jane's Addiction and Red Hot Chili Peppers. Jane's Addiction sang, "Ain't no wrong now, ain't no right, only pleasure and pain," from the song Ain't No Right. I've never heard it, I don't know how it goes. The Red Hot Chili Peppers followed this up by singing, "I like pleasure spiked with pain," from the song Aeroplane. Again, never heard it. Thus, these modern-day philosophers. Do you see the look on my face? You know when people ask atheists why they're so angry all the time? It's because of this kind of bullshit. Pop culture musical groups are not modern-day philosophers, you fucking piece of shit. Saying this, even as a joke, hurts. It pisses me off. My brain right now is pressing against the front of my skull, this very wide area here. It is causing me actual suffering to have to put up with this kind of bullshit. I am not kidding you. So you want to know why atheists are angry? It's because this kind of bullshit angers anyone with intellectual honesty, a working brain, the slightest modicum of intelligence. We are angered by this kind of outright bullshit. And people like myself cannot stand for it. I just cannot help but to be pissed off by this. I would like to be able to do a Dennett and just brush it off and explain my point calmly and rationally, but there is nothing rational about this kind of bullshit, and I have to answer it with the only emotional reaction I can muster. Thus, these modern-day philosophers took us from morality based on sensory input to the recognition that we are, in reality, speaking of interpretation of said input. Actually, in the based on sensory input thing that you made up, Mariano, author of this article, not they, you already said, yet this amounts to a bioorganism's subjective interpretation of sensory input. You didn't take us anywhere, and these modern-day philosophers didn't take us anywhere. You didn't even fucking start the car we were in. The Greek philosopher Epicurus, 341 to 270 BC, so about 350 years before the current era, 2,300 some years ago, that's how long they have been unable to answer this question. So, stated the classic form of the problem of evil. His syllogism may be stated: 1. If a perfectly good God exists, then there is no evil in the world. I would rephrase that to, there can be no evil in the world. But, hey, dishonesty, right? 2. There is evil in the world. 3. Therefore, a perfectly good God does not exist. Right. Christianity has failed to answer this. They cannot answer it, and we will see why as we go on. The logic behind the argument, again attributed to Epicurus, runs thus. Either God wants to abolish evil and cannot, or he can but does not want to. If he wants to but cannot, he is impotent. If he can but does not want to, he is wicked. If God can abolish evil and God really wants to do it, why is there evil in the world? And this also continues in the versions that I've seen. If God can neither abolish evil nor wants to, why call it God? Evil is indeed a very difficult problem. Well, thank you for letting us know that this question that has been posed to you for over 2,000 years is a difficult problem for you. But wait. This is not because it is philosophically or theologically difficult, but because it is emotionally difficult. Let that sink in for a second. oh yeah, that whole thing about God being good and there's being evil, and how the fuck does that work? It's not just it's not at all theologically difficult. It makes complete sense theologically, but it's emotionally difficult. All that criticism about no, that's not. It's just emotionally hard to answer. Okay, let's pretend I have brain damage to a massive degree, to the point where I'm actually a hologram being programmed, to move around by someone else because I'm just a vegetable. Even if it's emotionally difficult, what the fuck is your answer, douchebag? Oh yes, that is a difficult problem. But so here's some unrelated bullshit. Yeah. Remember what I just said about being angered by this kind of bullshit? Double it at this point. In seeking to respond to the problem of evil, we are pitting real pain versus abstract concepts. I agree. Real pain in the world versus the fictional character God. There's a reason we use this as atheists. It's because it's so fucking on the money that it hurts. Emotion versus intellect makes for an uneven fight. How do you argue against emotion? I wish I knew, because that's all atheists attempt to do. Argue intelligently against emotional bullshit. Which is the religious side, by the way. Thus, responses to the problem of evil are generally seen as heartless or dry as dust academic theorizing. No, but that's only because there are no responses to the problem of evil. If they existed, they might be heartless, or they might be dry as dust academic theorizing, although what the fuck that would turn out to be, I have no idea. Yeah, if you had any responses, that would be great. Can we get any of those? I'll even take heartless. I'll even take dry as dust. Anything at this point. I'll take boring. Hell, I would take incoherent at this point, because it would still be more than you're providing. Biblically and philosophically, yes, a sentence that starts with biblically is always going to be very convincing. Epicurus' first syllogistic point is false, since a perfectly good God who allows free will can exist, and thus his syllogism fails. His syllogism fails because God does exist and allows free will, and therefore his syllogism fails. Allow me to rephrase that simpler. Point 1 is false because red herring, therefore point 1 is false. Non sequitur. Epicurus' logic behind the argument fails because he proposes a restricted number of options. It is a false dichotomy. Actually, dumbass, it is a trichotomy, and it is not false because those are your three options. If he wants to but cannot, he's impotent. He wants to. Okay, you're great. Your God wants to. He can? Why is there evil in the world? He can but does not want to? Then he's not good. He's evil. Your God is either incapable, evil, or incoherent. Trichotomy. Tri, as in three, not dichotomy, as in two. This guy claims to be an authority on this kind of topic, and he can't even count. That is not me exaggerating for comic effect. He can't fucking count. 1, either God wants to abolish evil and cannot, or 2, he can but does not want to. Or he can and wants to but doesn't. Or he can't and doesn't want to, therefore he's a fucking dick. I mean, while we're just pointing out the inconsistencies in this douchebag's argument, he only listed the 3, but there are in fact 4 conclusions that can be derived from Epicurus. Yet, biblically and philosophically, a third, or 5th, if you're keeping track, option is that God wants to abolish evil and can, yet he functions on his own timing, and he has not done it yet because he has a higher purpose in allowing evil to persist for a time. Meaning, in the trichotomy, he can abolish evil, and God really wants to do it, so why is there evil in the world? Or, he can but does not want to yet, therefore he's a dick. This answer actually falls halfway between two of the 4-point argument that Epicurus is making. Congratulations on failing miserably, Mariano, the author of this article. I'm actually starting to get my vision going a little fuzzy right now because this is so stupid, it's blinding me. Note also, as we point out on this site, God did not create the world with evil, even though I know for a fact the Bible says he does, and has and did. It is the result of sin, except the parts, where if evil exists because of sin, then God had to create it because God created the conditions which allowed sin, and God created everything that exists, and therefore God created... Lying for, Jesus. Congratulations. This is getting worse and worse. Can you see a vein pulsing in my forehead on this side? Because I can feel something hurting right there. See the discussion under No Actual Evil in the Finished Creation and This Refutation of an Atheist. 2 more articles on creation.com. Looking at the link, they go to Slipshod Logic in Creation for Kids. Slipshod Logic in Creation for Kids? Well, the whole creation is slipshod logic, so hey, perfect for children. The second one is, does ribosome research prove Darwinian evolution? I assume the answer to that is yes, but creation.com thinks no. Sorry, swallowed my saliva there. Wrong hole. Evolution, the perfect God designing the airway, sharing the throat, meaning you can choke and die. Great design, God. 4.2, Atheism and the Euthyphro Dilemma. This one I also like. Epicurus and Euthyphro are 2 of my favorite things, to the point where I can never remember which is which. The Euthyphro Dilemma calls into the question the very basis, foundation, grounding, or premise upon which theistic morality is built. Because while we're counting things up to 4, Mariano, the author of this article, really does have to make up for not being able to count, so he's going to bring up 4s a lot from in the rest of this chapter, I believe. Its name comes from Plato's work Euthyphro, written in 380 BC, wherein Socrates proposes the dilemma which states, is something good because God proclaims it to be good, or does God proclaim something to be good because it is good, and therefore God is merely telling the truth about it? Translations vary, such as gods for God, virtuous or moral for good, etc. Yes, originally Plato did not refer to the Christian God because he was not a Christian. He predates Christianity by several centuries, in fact. So, of course, Plato would not have used the Christian God. Socrates' question to Euthyphro caught him in the horns of a dilemma. Is something good because God proclaims it to be good? Which is to ask whether something is good merely because God proclaims it to be, in which case goodness is an arbitrary construct, and at a whim God could change that which is good into that which is bad, and vice versa. Right. The idea of objective morality that people like William Lane Craig cling to so hard is disproven by the first part of the Euthyphro Dilemma here. If something is good because God says so, then he could change his mind, and therefore it is subjective, not objective. Or 2, does God proclaim something to be good because it is good? And I'm adding again, and God is merely reporting the facts. Which is to ask whether there's something up, above, beyond, and separate, see the 4 coming in again, from God, to which God must adhere. Does God have to act according to a moral standard which is outside of himself, in which case God is not at all sufficient and in fact obeys a higher standard than himself? Right, if God proclaims things to be good because they are good and God is beholden to them, then God is a pathetic messenger boy giving us knowledge of this other thing, that we would be able to figure it out anyway because it's objective and it's superior to God, and even an all-powerful being would be beholden to it. Therefore, why wouldn't humans be capable of coming to that conclusion themselves? Both of these prongs, the horns of the dilemma, is what destroys William Lane Craig every single time. And I know people love William Lane Craig if they're idiots, but Craig has never answered this satisfactorily. He is unable to. All Christians, all theologians throughout human history have failed to answer this, as they have Epicurus' problem of evil, because their theology is incoherent. You can say a bunch of stuff, and so long as no one thinks about it, it makes sense. Steve Shives from the YouTube channel Steve Likes to Curse has an atheist reads theory, and there's something that some douchebag called a roadrunner tactic. That's when Willie Coyote runs off the cliff and he's just floating in the air until he looks down and then he starts to fall. Well, that's basically Christianity in a nutshell. They make up this God, well, Christianity, the Abrahamic religions in a nutshell. They make up this God and they slap a bunch of patches on there, to make him sound plausible. But if you actually think about it, there's nothing inside of those patches. It's just an empty shell of nothing. And this is why. While many theologies fail to answer the Euthyphro dilemma, every single one ever, biblical Trinitarian theology does not fail. Well, thank you for asserting that. I'm sure that's very convincing to simpletons. Let us briefly consider how various theologies fare. Right, because if you want to prove your point, start with other failures. And I do mean other failures. Generally stated, in dualism, we have in view two co-eternal gods. Where? That's not what dualism is it? I vaguely remember dualism being the thing and the nature of the thing being shared simultaneously. Like, this is an eraser, but it contains eraserness. It has the property of being a thing and also the property of being more than that thing. As I said, eraserness. Dualism is very weird that way, but I thought that's what dualism was. Two co-eternal gods, where the fuck does that come from? But hey, again, honesty? Not yet. Not here. Two separate and distinct beings, two separate and distinct persons. Remember that. This concept consists of one good God and one evil God. In such cases, the goodness of the one is measured against the evil of the other and vice versa. Moreover, the one considers itself to be good and the other evil. Thus, theological dualism presents arbitrary morality in that which one is good and which one is evil is purely subjective. Right. Remember that. Generally stated, in strict monotheism, we have in view one single being, one single person. Since such a God lacked companionship or relationship, it had to create beings with whom to enjoy that which it lacked, and may therefore be considered imperfect or incomplete. Regardless of the reason for creation, the strictly monotheistic God existed alone from eternity, and so companionship or relationship are simply not part of its nature, so that such a God generally treats its creations as a dictator whose will is absolute and unrestrained. Remember that one too. Such a God is typically not personal, bullshit, or perhaps more accurately, not personable. See what they did? They said personal and they said personable. They added a letter or two. This is because both their personal morality and their moral prescriptions for their creation are arbitrary, since it had to concoct them upon having other beings with which to deal. Which doesn't explain why it fails so much as that is why it fails. Generally stated, in pantheons, polytheism and henotheism, which I've never heard of henotheism up to this point, I don't know what it is. We have in view more than two gods who are either eternal or were created by one or two previously existing gods, sometimes a male god and a female god, such as in Mormonism. They were not lacking in eternal relationships, since they did enjoy them with each other. Yet, being distinct gods, distinct being distinct persons, what the fuck does that mean? But remember it. They are not exactly famous for conducting moral relationships with each other, but are rather infamous for their quarrels and warring. Really? There's quarrels and warring in Mormonism mythology? I don't really remember that. I mean, I know Satan, Jesus' brother, comes in, but I don't really see how that's relevant. Since these or true for all the other religions, by the way, since these supernatural beings could enjoy good or bad relationships with other supernatural beings, other gods, they were not generally interested in relationships with humans. They generally considered humans to be playthings. They may manipulate our fates, they may take human form and fornicate with us, but there is little, if anything, that they did that they could have considered moral relationships. Since Euthyphro worshipped such a pantheon, it was perfectly reasonable for Socrates to think there was a standard of goodness to which the gods were beholden. No. The pantheon was part of the problem, the dilemma. And really, fornicate with us is only something that happens in pantheons? Virgin Mary ring a bell? Lastly, generally stated, in Trinitarian monotheism, the Creation.com approved seal of Christianity, we have in view one God and yet three persons, each of whom is God, each of whom is eternal, each of whom is distinct, and yet each of whom are the one God, one co-eternal, coexisting, co-equal being consisting of three persons. Counting to three this time. Right. Except, in dualism, you also have two separate and distinct persons, who can, in some cases, be one and the same. In strict monotheism, you do have one being one single person who lacked companionship and then created people, to suck his dick, as in Trinitarian monotheism, or what the fuck did God create people for in the first place? In pantheons, you have people quarreling and warring. Right. They were not interested in relations with humans. But at the same time, if they had their relations with each other, wouldn't the three different gods of Trinitarianism, who are one God but aren't one God, also fall under that category? If you really want to fuck with your own mind for a bit, read these over and over, and you'll see that the Trinitarian monotheism not only fails to make its own case, but heavily borrows from the previously existing cases and the previously explained cases in this article. The God of the Bible has been referred to as one what and three whos. Yes, I'm sure that the God of the Bible has been referred to thusly by insignificant dipshits like Mariano, the author of this article. This God is not alone in eternity, and yet is not in relation to separate eternal beings. It's great when you can make shit up to prop up your crippled little argument, isn't it? God enjoys a relationship that is both unified in purpose and diverse amongst the persons. What the fuck does that mean? Who knows? They're not going to explain it. Trinitarianism, by the way. The God, the Father, the Holy Spirit. The Father is God. The Son is God. The Holy Spirit is God. A equals D, and B equals D, and C equals D, but A does not equal B, and B does not equal C. Trinitarian monotheism is not only self-contradictory, but completely inco-fucking-herent. A equals 1 and B equals 1 and C equals 1, but A does not equal B, does not equal C, does not equal A. Mathematically incorrect and impossible, and as I said, inco-fucking-herent. That infix brought to you by frustration. Thus, is something good because God proclaims it to be good, or does God proclaim something to be good because it is good? Ethics, rephrasing the dilemma. Ethics is based upon the triune God's nature. Says you. God's nature is relation and benevolent, and I still don't see how that makes any fucking difference. This relationship is eternal and free from conflict. Well, eternal says you, and free from conflict, no it doesn't. See the Euthyphro dilemma in the first place. God enjoys relationships and encourages his creation to enjoy like relationships. Well, no, actually he hates like relationships. You know, penises only go in vaginas. No penises like this, or no vaginas going like this. It's don't enjoy. Oh wait, is that what that we're trying to say? I'm confused. In this view, an afterlife is conceived of as the enjoyment of relationships with other humans grounded upon the mutual enjoyment of an eternal relationship with God. Yeah, I'm gonna agree with that. Because again, Revelations chapter 4, you get to suck God's dick forever. God does not merely exhibit attributes. God is the attributes. This is how they fix the Euthyphro dilemma. God doesn't have attributes. He is attributes. God is love, 1 John 4, 8 and 16. Thus God did not have arbitrarily to invent ethics. God's very nature is the ethos. So the answer to the dilemma is that God says something is good because it is good. Let that sink in. The answer to the dilemma is that God is unnecessary to explain ethos, ethics. So the solution is that this is a false dilemma. Oh, convenient. Oh, there's a dilemma. Oh, it's a false dilemma. Fixed! Perfect goodness is an essential part of his character, not something outside him. God indeed commands things which are good, because he is good, and therefore he says what's good, and therefore because it is good. But the reason they are good is because they reflect God's own nature, see above. So the goodness does not come ultimately from God's commandments, but from his nature, which then results in good commandments. Which it means he says they're good because they're good. Congratulations, you've failed to answer the Euthyphro dilemma, just like every other dumb fuck before you. At least you're in good company. Well, if you call that good. 4.3. Atheism's problem of evil. Imagine considering the problem of evil and, illogically, concluding that God does not exist. I can't do that because that is the logical conclusion, the one that solves the problem of evil. What happens next? Well, you look around the world again and notice that evil still exists, and now you don't even have God to blame. Because that's the point of the problem of evil, blaming God. Not pointing out that the God hypothesis is an incoherent and useless one. No, evil exists and we're angry at this, therefore we blame God. I would seriously like to meet Mariano, the author of this article, so I could punch him in the fucking mouth. Because this is just... Atheism is the lack of a belief in God, he stated in chapter 1. What does this have to do with that definition? Not a goddamn thing. He should know, but he either doesn't care, or is too inept to remember, which in either case makes this entire article a pointless exercise in the frustration of atheists like me, because it certainly won't serve any purpose for anyone else reading this. Rejecting God does nothing about evil. Right, but that's not the fucking point. Thus, atheism does nothing about evil. And it's not supposed to, because again, atheism is the lack of a belief in God. The lack of a belief in God doesn't turn into the lack of evil. Of course it does nothing. It cannot do anything, and it is not supposed to do anything. He gets it. Another lonely little argument standing by itself, surrounded in a sea of bullshit. So beautiful. I slightly feel better now compared to previously. The anger and frustration that I was experiencing has taken a notch down. and that's going to disappear very quickly. Atheism is merely an idea, and thus has no volition by which to do anything at all. Indeed, and that is just the point, atheism is an idea. But God is a being who can and does various things about evil, such as letting it continue because he's a fucking dick. God can condemn it absolutely, without doing anything about it, even though he can, but he doesn't want to, because he's a dick. God can make provision for redeeming evil. Oh, you enslaved people your whole life, you raped and killed and pillaged. You can be redeemed. I could have stopped you at any point and invalidated your need for redemption. I could have saved all those people whose free will you violated. Although I love free will so much that I won't violate it, I'm perfectly fine with other people violating it for me. And since I make people up and have a plan, your invalidating of other people's free will is my invalidation of other people's free will, but I'll just redeem your evil and let's stop talking about it because it makes my theology look even worse than it actually is. Oh wait, no. It accurately represents the evil behind the theology. And God can abolish evil, but doesn't. That's kind of the point. God can abolish evil. He can do various things about it, such as abolish it. And he never fucking does. Not once, ever. Which is why atheists like myself point out problems of evil like this, to point out that there is no God. Because your entire theology, your entire mythology is nonsense. And a careful analysis of that mythology points out where that nonsense is most highly concentrated. And this is an example of it. Oh sure, God can do various things about evil. He just doesn't. But he wants to, and he can, and he will. Maybe. But he never has, and, well, let's change the topic. Because God loves you. It says so, John 3:16. So the solution is that this, I went back a bit. Atheism not only does nothing about evil, atheism actually makes evil even worse. Wait. Again, going back a paragraph or two, of course it does nothing. It cannot do anything and is not supposed to do anything. Atheism is merely an idea and thus has no volition by which to do anything at all. How the fuck can something that has no volition by which to do anything at all, cannot do anything, and is not supposed to do anything, make something worse? Atheism guarantees that evil is for nothing. It has no greater purpose or meaning. It guarantees no redemption of evil. Right. Prove to me that you actually have redemption of evil, and I'll then agree that that makes atheism make evil worse. Evil is for nothing. Period. Atheism doesn't guarantee that. That is the truth. You can invent a magic man to make that go away because it makes you feel better. But evil is for nothing. It has no greater purpose or meaning. Evil happens. Bad things happen. They don't happen for a reason, not necessarily. They can happen. If you drop your wallet and then a bus blindsides you and you go flying into 6 different pieces dead, then that didn't happen for a reason, for a greater purpose. It did happen for nothing, although you couldn't call it evil. Things happen. Atheism doesn't guarantee that it's for nothing, or that it makes it worse, or there's no redemption from it. It happens. And there is no redemption from evil, because there's no thing to redeem you from evil. There's no way for things to be redeemed from evil. There's no greater purpose or meaning behind evil. It's just bad people doing bad shit over and over. And I'm sorry, I think I'm getting hiccups or something. However, it is inaccurate to state that atheism guarantees that evil is for nothing and has no greater purpose or meaning. So, atheism guarantees that evil is for nothing, but it's inaccurate to state that. So thank you for admitting that you're lying. This is because in the absolute materialism that atheism implies, evil is very purposeful in that it benefits the evildoer. Oh, so there's no purpose, but there is a purpose, and it's bad. Which one is it, you fucking dumbass? The evildoer commits evil acts, and as long as they're not caught, they evade the judicial systems of this world and simply get away with it. The victim suffers and may suffer for decades while the evildoer enjoyed committing evil deeds. And enjoys the benefits that he gained in doing those evil deeds. Although that may be counterbalanced by the fact that he has to be on the run for the rest of his life. Yes, there is no ultimate justice in the world. It sucks. You can't go from that to, therefore God makes it all better with magic. Does not follow. The fact of evil in the world is one of the very best reasons for rejecting atheism. No, the best reason for rejecting atheism, and one of the only reasons for rejecting atheism, is because you're a fucking idiot who doesn't know what the fuck words mean. Atheism's Euthyphro dilemma. Because, of course, projecting is a valid form of argumentation to people who don't know what the fucking argument is. Let us propose an atheist version of the Euthyphro dilemma. Is something good because atheists proclaim it to be good, or do atheists proclaim something to be good because it is good? If something is good merely because an atheist can be misrepresented by a theist as being exactly the same as the argument they're making against God, but it's really them who's wrong and wrong, then goodness is an arbitrary construct and at the whim of atheists who could change that which is good into that which is bad and vice versa. This not only doesn't answer why atheism is bad, it restates, again, the problem you have with your incoherent God, Mr. Christian. Yeah, atheists, I'll just keep reading this bullshit and eventually get to a point. Atheists tend to claim that we somehow intuit the ever-evolving morality, or as Richard Dawkins puts it, the shifting Zeitgeist, German for spirit of the age. As to how we discern the Zeitgeist's latest maneuver, one can almost use phrases like it's in the air. It's not specifically stated that that is Dawkins saying it. It is a sentence fragment that is being quoted. So again, we don't have the context. And this reeks of quote mining. Yeah, you can almost use phrases like it's in the air if you're being poetic. Well, therefore, atheism is wrong. No. It is a hard thing to describe. It is a hard thing to explain. And we are starting kind of with a huge handicap here because religious people have been running this race with a made-up argument that's just been running. They don't know where the finish line is. They don't know what direction they're going. They just took something and ran with it. Meanwhile, rational people like myself have to come in centuries, millennia later, deal with tons upon tons of bullshit. We have to backtrack all the stupid, useless ground that has been covered by these idiots running in every which way. And then we have to explain something that is insanely complex back to these idiots who can't even understand the very basics of this conversation. Yeah, we can almost use phrases like it's in the air. Because that's kind of, yeah, it's poetic. Congratulations. Do not think that this means that Richard Dawkins has no absolute standards by which to determine what is evil. I thought you were covering that he has no basis for deciding why rape is wrong earlier. Now he does? Oh no. Apparently he I don't know. The fuck? I mean, this is incoherent like fuck. What's to prevent us from saying Hitler wasn't right? I mean, that is a genuinely difficult question. End quote. Let's change the topic now. Yet, he has made a definite statement about what he sees as absolute evil. Quote, it is evil to describe a child as a Muslim child or a Christian child. I think labeling children is child abuse, and I think there's a very heavy issue. End quote. Oh, so Hitler being wrong is a complex question, especially if the only thing that is evil is labeling children. Do you see the dishonesty yet? If you haven't seen it yet, up to this point, please tell me that this shows you that the author of this article is scum. More on this below in the Religion as Child Abuse section. Back to the atheist Euthyphro dilemma. Again, state a quote and then pretend it made an argument and move on. Back to the atheist Euthyphro dilemma. The question is whether something is good merely because the atheist proclaims it to be good, or is there something up above, beyond, and separate from the atheist to which the atheist must adhere. Does the atheist have to act according to an ethical standard that is outside of the individual? Yes. In which case the atheist is not all-sufficient and in fact obeys a higher standard than the individual, or a group of individuals known as society. That awkward moment when you answer your own fucking question and think you didn't. Yeah, we do have to answer to a higher ethical standard that is outside of individuals. It's called society. And no, a single atheist is not at all sufficient to explain all of it. Because, get this, a society is a group of individuals. Scumbag. If something is good merely because the atheist proclaims it to be good, then if two atheists disagree, the same action could be both good and evil, which conflicts with the law of non-contradiction. Actually, no, it doesn't conflict with that law of non-contradiction, because it's two opinions on a topic shared by two people who don't necessarily talk about the same thing in the same way. Again, this dumbass doesn't even know what the fuck he's talking about, and he's supposed to be the authority in this case. At this point, a common objection is raised to the effect that two people disagreeing proves that there is no absolute ethic, standard moral law, moral code, etc. Right. If two people can argue on something, there's... Well, no, not necessarily right, but if two people can disagree strong on something and never make their case, it does point towards, although not necessarily proving, there is no absolute ethic, standard, moral law, moral code, etc. Yeah. If you can argue and come to no conclusion and have good points on either side, then maybe there's no absolute metric. Great. Oh, that's bad because God. Right. I forgot for a moment there. Yet this is tantamount to arguing thus. Claim. In the USA, it is absolutely illegal to run a red light in a non-emergency response vehicle. Response. If that is the case, then why do some people operating non-emergency response vehicles run red lights? It must not be true that there is such an absolute law. Dumbass, the absolute law is not that it is impossible to run a red light. When a red light comes on in an intersection, the dome doesn't fall, creating an impenetrable, invisible force field that butterflies love for some reason. It's illegal to do it. It is absolutely illegal in the United States to run a red light if it is a non-emergency vehicle that you are in. But people still do it because they break the fucking law. It's an absolute law. It's true, I think, in most countries that you're not allowed to run a red light. Countries that have lights, anyways. But people do it because they're dicks. Not because the law is not absolute. Oh, there's no law about red lights. People run red lights sometimes. Therefore, it's not illegal. What can I possibly say that I have not said about how idiotic this is at this point? All this shows is that there is a hierarchy of morality, also called graded absolutism, meaning there's no absolutism. Great. That is, there are higher and lower laws. Right, the law of contradiction is not the same as the law of running red lights is bad. Douchebag. And if there is a conflict, one should obey the higher law and is exempt from the lower law. In the above case, the duty of an emergency vehicle to arrive as quickly as possible to help in an emergency makes them exempt from the duty to stop at a red light. In general, the hierarchy is duty to God is greater than duty to man is greater than duty to property. So it's like the 3 laws of robotics, except without any sort of morality, and all of it sucking God's cock. Yeah, the higher law is not obeying God. Even if your God exists, fuck that douchebag. He can show up if he has a fucking complaint. He can drag us to fucking court and make his case there. The case is not... An exception in law is a higher hierarchy of law than the other one. It just doesn't make any fucking sense. George F.R. Ellis, a theist, not an atheist, a theist, noted the following: the foundational line of true ethical behavior, its main guiding principle valid across all times and cultures, is the degree of freedom from self-centeredness of thought and behavior and willingness freely to give up one's own self-interest on behalf of others. Bullshit. That is not the foundational line valid across all times and cultures. See the Nazis. See Christianity. It is not about giving up one's own self-interest on behalf of others. Enslaving people. It's about other people giving up their self-interest on your behalf. Sucking God's dick, same thing. You force other people to obey your God's rules, giving up their self-interest on your behalf, on the behalf of your imaginary friend. Ellis here is just completely fucking wrong. Moreover, if something is good merely because an individual, no, or society, yes, proclaims it to be so, no, it's because careful analysis of the consequences of your actions, again, causing harm, ethical basis. Earlier, we covered that. But, hey, that was, like, minutes ago. That doesn't count anymore. Then Nazism was good for the majority of Germans who outnumbered those who they persecuted. But it then became evil when the fitter and more numerous Allied forces defeated them. No. It is not good merely because society says so. It was evil because humanity at large. Not just because Hitler got his ass kicked. It seems apparent that there is something, again, up above, beyond, and separate, and transcendent from the atheist. We're up to 5 now, to which the atheists must appeal to for their moral declarations. No, there isn't. During his debate with William Lane Craig, entitled "Does God Exist?", James Robert Brown, an atheist, stated, "You can't just make up facts, including moral facts. You're under obligation, moral obligation, without God. You don't need God for this. You have a moral obligation to not murder, not rob people. All I asked you to do is believe there's no God, but still murder is wrong. There are moral facts, as well as physical facts, as well as mathematical facts. That's all I'm asking. It's just a basic fact, a basic moral fact, that murder is wrong." Those silly atheists, believing there's no God, therefore morality can still exist. Yes, atheists can think through moral issues and come to a conclusion. Well, fuck, that's a hell of a lot more than you've been doing, Mariano, author of this article. They may even consider these conclusions to be absolutes or obligations. They may. I don't know that they will. I don't know that they do, but they may. But these are merely impotent claims that only carry force of obligation when the governmental societal iron fist is behind them. And the claims of religious people are merely impotent claims that only carry force of obligation when the magic man in the sky is behind them. The difference is being that governmental and societal iron fist exists, whereas magic man in the sky with a beard that is invisible doesn't. And they are only potent if the moral obligation breaker is caught. Because, yes, justice isn't perfect, but God fixes that by magic. But what about being moral for the simple and pure motive of being moral without expectation of reward and punishment? Yes, what about being moral for morality's sake? What about being moral because the benefits outweigh the consequences? Negative consequences, anyway. This will be considered below in the section entitled Theism's Reward and Punishment versus Atheism's Pure Motives. How about Theism's Reward and Punishment versus Atheism's Reward and Punishments? Oh, well, I guess you'd lose in a fair fight, so you have to blindfold your opponent and cut off his legs and arms and his cock. Succinctly stated, atheism discredits condemnation, and condemnation discredits atheism. Oh, great, they can make a sentence that flips around like that, therefore they must be right. Atheism discredits condemnation because their condemnation is merely an expression of personal moral preferences, arguments from outrage, or impotent epistemic assertions. Right back at you again, douchebag. Condemnation discredits atheists because atheists' deep and heartfelt urges to condemn immorality demonstrates that they are appealing to a moral standard that we say is outside of the individual and is called God and has a son named Jesus and also the Holy Spirit. Who knows what the fuck that is, but we believe it because we're Trinitarian monotheists, and I added that part up, by the way. Again, right back at you, douchebag. The deep and heartfelt urges to condemn immorality come from our understanding of the consequences, the end result of our actions, and our understanding, our empathy, if you will, that allows us to share an understanding of other people's suffering. I mean, I've been sick before. When I see someone else who's sick, I don't go, ha ha, sucker, it's your turn this time. And go, man, I had that last week, it sucks. God told me to say that right now. You know, it can't possibly be that my own personal experience and my, enlightened self-interest and my reasoning capabilities allow me to understand what's going on to a deeper level than God magic man said this, do it. No, it has to be that God really exists and we're just pretending. Don't grant the point that they lack a belief in God, just accuse them of believing in God anyways. That's the Sci-10-Bruggenkate way. 4.5. Theism's Reward and Punishment versus Atheism's Pure Motive. Theism's Reward and Punishment. An argument against Christian claims of God-ordained ethics that has become ubiquitous in atheist circles is that Christian morality is actually immoral since, so the claim goes, it depends upon threats of punishments and enticements to receive rewards. This applies to various religions. The first thing to point out is that Christianity does not hold to a works-based salvation doctrine. No, it holds to a faith-based salvation doctrine. Just say you're a Christian and that's good enough. Except you have to do what God says also, so it is works. Fuck. Inconsistency, you've done it again. Good deeds do not buy heaven, except when they do, which is all the time. Yet, to the charge that, even so, Christian morality is based on the expectation of reward or punishment or heaven and hell, let us secondly note the intolerance. The fuck? If you are the sort of person who is perfectly moral, but you are moral due to fear of punishment, atheists condemn you, you are not allowed to disagree with them. The fuck? Or you can disagree and suffer their looking down their collective noses at you, because that's what we're doing. We're looking down our noses at you. I would look down my nose at you right now, but the camera is actually slightly higher than my eyesight. It's like, yeah, so I'd have to do this, and then you might see the inside of my nose, and no one wants that. No, actually, we condemn you for simultaneously being a moral person while saying you believe and agree with an immoral construct like Christianity. There's a difference. There's a distinction. It's called nuance. You might want to look it up, douchebag. Atheists presume that they can read the minds and or discern the motivations of those they condemn. Really? What was that you were just doing seconds ago? Oh right, you were trying to say that you can know our motivations or read our minds. Fuck you, hypocrite. How do they know who is behaving morally because of reward and punishment? Well, it's quite simple. This is how we know. Do you believe that doing good actions gets you into heaven? Yes. To some extent, it informs your decision. Do you believe doing good actions prevents you from going to hell? Yes. To some extent, that influences your action. It's not your whole thing. We're not saying we read your mind or know your motivations better than you do. But at some level, it has to be in there somewhere. People do things for a variety, a myriad of reasons. But is it a myriad or is it just myriad? I don't know. I apologize if I got it wrong. Yeah, people do things for a variety of reasons. Atheists simply understand that one of those reasons is the reward and punishment that is so prominent at the core of this bullshit belief system. How many times are atheists threatened with hell if we don't start sucking God's dick? That's the punishment part. They're trying to get us to do what they want because punishment. I mean, it doesn't take a mind reader to discern the motivation here. Apparently, they merely consider whether someone adheres to such a presumed belief system. No. We don't assume or consider someone adheres to such. We wait for people to tell us they do, and we evaluate the belief system, and we come to that conclusion. It's not guesswork. It's not magic. It's a conclusion based on something like 2 + 2 = 4. Yet even then, how do they know? I just explained how. You say you do, therefore we accept it, we grant it, and continue the discussion, which we actually do, but you don't, you fucking lying sack of shit. Let us consider Christianity, for example. Christians would likely answer, why be moral, by referencing, for the love of God and the love of humans who are made in God's image. And that's the point where they would get smacked in the face by someone with testicles. And I apologize if that sounded sexist. I'm using figurative testicles here, which also some women who aren't idiots could adhere to. Yeah, the love of God and the love of humans who are made in God's image. That's it? It has nothing to do with God says so, and He'll punish you at all? This is why we infer that that's one of the reasons. It's not just for the love of God. Consider this scenario. A soldier receives the honor of a Purple Heart. Right, because getting your leg blown off is an honor because you get that little medal. During the ceremony, an atheist stands up and shouts that the soldier is undeserving, since they were merely acting out of fear of punishment and expectation of reward. If they deserted, they would fear charges of treason, and they were heroic merely due to expectation of being rewarded with a Purple Heart. Right, because that's the greatest aspiration of all military personnel. They want to get a little Purple Heart pinned to their chest while getting their hand blown off, or leg, or, hey, I've been using the word a lot, their cock. Again, apologies to women. I understand women are also in the armed services, and that's great. Well, the armed services sucks, but hey, equality. Let us consider another scenario in light of the fact, I'm kind of glossing over that bullshit scenario that was presented because, one, that would never happen, and two, we're not dealing with a little metal pinned to your chest or going to jail. We're dealing with the all-powerful, they believe, all-knowing, they believe, creator of the universe, they believe, who has ultimate power to pass ultimate judgment for all of eternity at all times. Yeah, if the soldier took a bullet, he was sitting quietly in a bar somewhere, not doing anything, and he got shot, he's not really deserving of a medal. The Purple Heart is given, in my opinion, and I apologize to military personnel watching this who get offended, a Purple Heart is basically a booby prize. You get your hand blown off, we got to recognize you in some way to thank you for the service, even though you're now completely useless to us. Here's a medal and a ceremony to make you feel better. the Purple Heart is just really a bad example for this. But even if it is a medal, well, if a soldier stands up and does something heroic, like clear out a bunker single-handedly and save his whole pinned-down platoon, he is deserving of recognition. He has done something. He may fear the threat, but sure, he deserves it. Why do Christians not? Well, look, if a Christian believes they're going to heaven and they do things that helps people, well, hey, great, they're helping people. The problem is you help people to make yourself feel worthy in God's eyes and don't want to go to heaven, so it's the most self-serving thing imaginable. Yeah, you deserve some props, but you're also being a complete dick. So we balance the two, and a little bit of props, you're helping people. You're doing it for yourself, for ultimate pleasure. I mean, the line just goes up to infinity at this point. Dick. Let us consider another scenario in light of the fact that all secular, atheistic, non-religious countries/nations/governments/societies premise their laws upon reward-punishment. Yeah, that is a fact. Congratulations. You are driving your car with an atheist as a passenger. You come to a red light and stop. The atheist asks you, "Why did you stop?" You answer, "Because I do not want to cause an accident whereby someone could get hurt or killed. I am empathic and compassionate and do not want to harm anyone." Yet the atheist protests, "Oh please, you know very well that if you run that red light you could get a ticket and you are merely stopping in order not to suffer." This is actually an argument against Christianity. Too stupid to realize it, but yeah. We understand the consequences of our actions when we're atheists. That's why our morality is superior. To some level, Christians or all religious people who have this concept of a hell or a punishment land, they do fear punishment for lawbreakers. Atheists don't have that constraint on them. We are that much more selfless because we don't expect an eternity of reward or punishment for our actions. We understand that there are some self-serving consequences, rewards, and punishments, but we don't think they're eternal. We don't do it for heaven or to avoid hell. We do it for good, real reasons. Always for good, real reasons. Well, not necessarily always, but certainly more good, real reasons than Christians have, because they already start out with a -1. Atheism's pure motives. The twin fallacy to the theism's reward and punishment claim is a claim that, sans divide reward and punishment, only atheists have pure motives for morality, or doing good, since they are doing so merely for its own sake. Well, no. I explained why atheists have better motives, but it's not pure. So this is just more bullshit. This was the assertion behind the American Humanist Association's bus ad campaign, which stated, "Why believe in God? Be good for goodness' sake." No, that has nothing to do with atheism having pure motives. You can be good without God, was the point of that. And you can, and everyone is, by default, because there is no God, so if you're good, you're automatically good without God. Yet, just as with any twins, this fallacy shares its sisters. Really, all twins are male and female, or have a sister. Really? Interesting. Just as with all twins, there's a sister. Unfounded presuppositions. It is presupposing to know the atheist's mind and or discerning their motivations. Well, that didn't seem to bother you a fucking minute ago. But what else could be motivating the atheist? Surely it is pure goodness. Name one atheist who claims that. Hell, name one who implies that, and I'll be satisfied. Perhaps, however, that would be a utopian and unskeptical narrow view. Utopian, yes. Unskeptical, not if it's true. And narrow, well, I guess it counts as narrow if it's true and it is the whole truth and nothing but the truth. Yes, the truth can be a very narrow view, especially if you don't poison it and toss garbage on it the way religion does. The atheist could be motivated by multitudinous, impure factors, such as those which I already noted in the Dan Barker morality subsection of the main section on atheism, ethics, and morality. If you wish to be a healthy person, yada 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 yada. We covered this already. Yeah, That's why this bullshit argument you're making is wrong. You already pointed out that no one agrees with it. Thus, the atheist may be seeking public approval, may seek to give... Yeah, no one is saying that atheists only have pure goodness motives in mind, except you, in order to prove them wrong, which is called a straw man. And that's how we end this excessively long chapter, chapter 4. I am parched. Drink time, and see you in chapter 5 coming up.